With me today I have Police Chief Kenny Culpepper, who has definitely been hard at work over the past week trying to coordinate relief efforts and just keep peace throughout the town. How are you doing today?
A little bit tired, but okay.
All right. Well, the first question that we have to ask everybody is, where were you during the tornado?
Well, when we have bad weather that's coming in, what we do, and especially tornadic weather, and normally we know where the cell's approaching from, what direction it's approaching from. So we'll position our officers along usually the I-65 corridor or just west of the I-65 as spotters, so that we can see if something's on the ground, hopefully, and we can give warning by our radio. And so I was just west of I-65 with one of our lieutenants, J.P. White, and we were weather spotting, and we saw the tornado as it approached, and then we saw it as it started to cross I-65 just south of where we were at over the overpass. And as the tornado came in, we were paralleling it on 278 on a convergence course, to where we were just a little bit behind it, but almost parallel to it as we were going in. We were given the direction and what areas it was affecting in an excited voice, by the way.
I bet. I can just imagine the thoughts that would go through your mind as you see that going towards the city.
And at one point in time, Lieutenant White was in front of me, and I remember saying, "It's J.P. White," and I said, "JP, don't get in front of it, don't get in front of it," because we were on a converging path, and I was worried that we would get too far in front of it and then get caught up in it. And I saw some of the damage to my right as I came in past West Main, but when I got to 2nd Avenue on the east side and looked back to my right, it had just passed through, and I saw an individual that was laying out in the street, kind of in the rubble. And I pulled in at that point in time, and just, that was as far as I got. And my last sight of the tornado as it was, headed out towards Lake Catoma, Larkwood area. And at that point, we just started our rescue efforts.
So I know that as soon as you go into an area like that that's been affected by the storms, there's so much rubble and debris and just people everywhere, I'm sure, coming out of their basements. What's the first thing that you do when you go into a situation like that?
Well, what we're trying to do is we're trying to find, it's kind of like triage. I'm not sure if you're familiar with that concept. What we're trying to do is find the people who need us the most. In other words, we may bypass somebody like this gentleman I saw that was laying in the street. He was bruised and battered, but he wasn't seriously injured. So you pass him and you go to somebody else, somebody that might be trapped under rubble, somebody that's seriously injured that you need to get immediate assistance for. So we go into that kind of search and rescue mode. And I just want to say we were very fortunate in that Hanceville had been hit by very high winds that morning and had a lot of damage and some injuries down there. So we had 15 police officers that normally would not have been here. We had called them in to assist Hanceville. Well, when we got hit, we just pulled those 15 officers straight back up here. We didn't have to call them at home and say, "Get ready, come in." They were already here in the county working down at Hanceville. They heard us on the radio, so they were already en route to us without us even saying anything. So we were able to ramp up our forces in the police department. And it was the same thing with the fire department. The fire department had the Huntsville Heavy Rescue. It's a specially trained rescue crew from the Madison City, Madison County area, Madison Heavy Rescue instead of Huntsville. But they had came down along with Decatur Medium Rescue to go to Hanceville, where they had some early that morning they had some people trapped, and so they called these rescue units in. Well, when we got hit, they were at Hanceville and already in with their gear, with their trucks, and so they just jumped on their trucks and came up. So within 20 minutes, 30 minutes at the most, we had rescue crews from outside the county, as well as, of course, the Cullman Fire and Rescue, and then we had all these police assets that had ramped up to assist Hanceville that were here to help us. So it really worked out well that we had these extra resources on hand.
Now, even with all these extra people in town to help and all these extra officers on duty, there's certainly still a number of challenges that any police department would face in the midst of something like this. What would you say is the biggest challenge that you face in a community that has been so devastated?
Well, on the day that an incident happens, your biggest challenge, especially as a supervisor, is to not get sucked in to the hands-on. In other words, once I went into the search and rescue mode, I was one person doing search and rescue, and at some point in time, as a chief or as a supervisor, you've got to back out and say, okay, what's the big picture? Where's the damage over here? Where's the damage over here? Do I have people here? You've got to get into that command mode, and it's so difficult to do that when you've got, you know, victims and people right in front of you. So to detach yourself as a supervisor or a commander and back out from the immediate scene and start looking at the big picture, that's the hardest thing the day of the event. After that, the hardest thing is trying to make sure that you have all the bases covered, because there's so many different angles that you're looking at. Of course, the search and rescue, security, the perimeter security, coordination with other agencies. We had the state troopers, we had the game and fish, we had volunteers from the Cullman County Sheriff's Department, Hansville, all these agencies, Adamsville, Albertville, I'm sure I'm going to miss somebody, but they came to assist, so you need to be able to tell them where to go and what to do. Another challenge is about a day or two into the event is the coordination of volunteers. When you have, you know, 1,000 volunteers that want to help, but they're not necessarily trained and they're not necessarily equipped, you have to be careful that you don't put them into a situation where they're going to injure themselves or create even more problems for the police, the fire, the medical services. We were extremely busy here because the ambulance service, their building, EMS, was destroyed down there by First Baptist Church. So they actually moved into this building here and we're working ambulance calls. We've got a large generator here at the police department that's powered by natural gas, so we never lost electricity. And we just, you know, moved them in. We set up tables. We divvied up tasks. We had 30 some odd state troopers show up almost immediately that first day, and we were, you know, getting cots and pillows, and they were sleeping here. So this place was extremely busy. At any given time, we might have 100 personnel working out of this building, sleeping in the building, eating in the building, and so coordinating all of that, it can be trying at times.
You talked a little bit about the different agencies coming in. One entity that a lot of the citizens of Cullman have seen in the past week has been the National Guard. Mm-hmm. They've definitely been a strong presence and something that is kind of unusual for people to see. Here, can you give us kind of a rundown of how the police department and the National Guard has worked together, and maybe like who's in charge of doing what? Yeah,
they've been excellent, and we couldn't have done it without them, especially securing the area. What we did with the National Guard, especially and the state troopers as well, is they've been invaluable in helping us set up a perimeter around the damaged areas, and that allows us, excuse me, to use our officers who have who are more knowledgeable about the streets and locations to go out and answer calls to check on welfare of somebody. You know, people are frantic. They see this on TV. The telephone lines are down, the electricity's down, and they want reassurance that their loved one is okay. So we're really covered up initially for the first day or two. Well, even now, as late as today, we've been doing security checks from people that haven't heard from somebody. And we will go to their residence, we'll knock on the door. And then you go into that, are you okay, do you need anything? You know, people are out without electricity, without power. We have special needs, people that need oxygen, that need dialysis, that have to have these things. So we're trying to find out who these people are and get them to what they need. Elderly people who can't maybe cook for themselves because they don't have electricity. So coordinating a lot of that, it can be challenging, but it's also very rewarding when you see it all work out, and it seems like it's all falling into place. But getting back to your original question, the National Guard has been super. You know, I retired out of the National Guard after 21 years, so I'm very familiar with how the National Guard works. And we were assigned a liaison officer that was here at the police department with us every day, every night. So we had somebody, actually they stayed in this room, that we could come to and we could say, here's what we need, here's where we need it, and we could get it up the chain of command, and it really facilitated things. They've been super. I tried to make it a point, and the Assistant Chief Craig Green tried to make it a point to make the rounds and talk to all the troopers and all the National Guardsmen on the checkpoints and just check with them, say, do you need anything? Do you need any food? Do you need any water? Y'all okay? And they would say, you know, you're the fourth person that's asked me that in the last hour, because the citizens of Cullman have just treated our guest officers and guest National Guardsmen so well, and I really appreciate that.
That's what we keep hearing, how the citizens have been so good at adapting to this new situation and treating everybody with respect. And we hope that you have seen a lot of that within the past week. Well, thank you so much for taking the time out of your, I'm sure, busy schedule to talk to us today. And
thank you.
Good luck in the next weeks.
Okay, thank you.